All right, what's going on, my people? So this video right here is kind of like a follow-up to a TikTok post that I posted, right? On my last podcast, my cousin said something out of this world, and it's basically along the lines of him not wanting to date black women because of all these other different type of things going on. Yeah, right? And it was getting so much traction, right? And the comments is actually kind of funny, but I want to dig into this topic a little bit because there is like a little small race war happening, and I don't think we're actually paying attention to it as much as we should. So the moral of the story was, I was telling my cousin that he needed to become like a better person, and he needed to heal and actually embody his masculinity in order for him to have a little bit more peace with the black, our black women, in other words, right? Because right now we're in a space where we're all traumatized, right? The black man is traumatized as hell from the things that the women's doing in this court system, and all the different things that's messing over our black communities. But then the black women are also tired of the men because the men aren't necessarily that emotionally intelligent, and they manifest a lot of the situations upon themselves, right? Now, granted, what the state that we're in right now with this like culture of everybody not liking each other is literally by design. I don't think there's any other race that hates each other as much as we do. Now, don't get it wrong, right? In other places of the world, like I think I saw this clip of like these people in like Palestine, or I don't know, I forgot the place, but it's in some third world country, right? And there's like 40-year-olds trying to marry like 13-year-olds. You get what I'm saying? So there's some wicked shit happening in all places of the world with every race, right? But when it comes to our interdynamic, just flat out not wanting to interact with each other, black people are the only ones that's getting to that point. But I do want to add this fact on too, because it also is a very known fact that a lot of black people do end up getting married to black people. But this conversation always leads us to, what are we going to do about it? How can we actually maneuver this space? And like I was saying in the video, in that podcast clip, man, I don't know how much I can put on the women to fix certain things as I can with the men in this instance, right? And the men, this comes down to actually just understanding them and giving them a little bit more grace, right? Because at least from my personal experiences and stuff like that, right? It's way easier for you to interact with a black woman when you know how to interact with your own mother, right? The further that you go on that healing journey of healing your mother wounds, you start becoming a little bit more softer to black women in general, right? I think this is a very big correlation that a lot of black men just skip over. If you don't like black women, you probably have some unresolved mother issues, because if you understood your mother, if you actually paid attention to what your mother was put through, what your mother went through just societally and environmentally, you would have a lot more grace for the people who are your age and also going through it at the beginning stages, and you'll be able to commingle in those spaces because you're not looking at them from a place of resentment or pain. You're viewing these black women from a place of understanding, which is honestly what they're asking for at this point. Because, man, we already know we're messed up. Like as a community, we know we're terrible. We know we're gangbanging, we're dope dealers. Now granted, like I said before, every race does this, cartels and everything else. But I'm talking about us. We're completely aware of what we do, right? Even our culture, the B word and stuff like that, right? Even though it's not, respectful, that is our culture, right? And we'll be saying it with no disrespect intended, but that's just because of where we grew up. So I can acknowledge, and our communities have acknowledged, that there's pieces of us that aren't good, that aren't, integratively and morally right to our higher selves. But it's going to come to a point where we can't just accept it. I think that's where we've gotten to. And I don't even like using the word oppressed, because I don't really believe that we're victims to a lot, but we've then got so much stuff put on our plate that we started accepting it instead of acknowledging that this is some BS on our plate. You get what I'm saying? These black women now, if I was to speak on the black counterparts, right, like our black women, right? One of the things that I would say that you guys need to like kind of adjust, right, would be your peace levels, right? What do I mean by this? You guys are very hyper independent, right? And that hyper independence it's okay. It makes a lot of sense why you guys are hyper independent, because you guys then ran across men and everything else that's not necessarily doing what they need to be doing. But that hyper independence biologically is pushing the men away, especially in areas where men typically like to provide. You get what I'm saying? Usually a man's hardwired to want to provide some type of financial cushion, some type of shelter, some type of food, some type of, a path towards something greater. Now, if you take everything that he has the possibility of doing and that he would want to do and then say, I don't want you doing it, I'm going to do it for myself, but I want you near me, that makes men feel very unbalanced. That makes men feel very unwanted. That makes men feel like they're just being used for, opportunity or, gain when they see necessary, which isn't right. A lot of men approach situations and they naturally want to invest. They naturally want to do certain things, act certain ways, get all cuddly and lovey. But when the articulation of where you guys are coming from isn't rooted in that peace and that love, they're going to shut down, right? That means when you have an argument or something like that, the moment you start raising your voice, you start getting out of pocket, you start getting very feisty, right? The only ways that that's not going to elevate or escalate, take the argument to a whole nother level is if that man is emotionally mature and emotionally healed, right? Which you're asking for a lot. You're asking for somebody to be healed enough to deal with your BS, right? Instead of saying, I'm acknowledging that this is some BS and I shouldn't even be putting somebody under this amount of pressure in the first place, right? And that's where the breaking point needs to happen, because men are starting to work on their emotional intelligence, right? Women are starting to work on their mouths and, how they're doing things and that hyper independence. But when you push the line and you have this sense of entitlement, like, I wouldn't be acting like this if men acted a better way. That's not even right at all, because you're going to end up running across a man who isn't acting like that. And you're going to have these old habits and these old ways of doing things ingrained in you. And you're going to hurt that quote unquote good man, because that's also something that's happening. And these good men turn into toxic assholes. And I'm saying this from like real time because, man, I was a good guy and I'm still am a good guy, right? But I had to instill a certain level of boundaries so that good guy energy didn't get ran over. Why? Because I was giving it to women. I was giving it to my black women in particular, because that's, the area, that's what I'm trying to wife up. I was giving it to that area and I was continuously being, undervalued, underappreciated, not respected, belittled for toxic things. You get what I'm saying? So from a man's perspective, when we're looking at a woman consciously choose toxic over love, that makes us question our own abilities, and that makes us question, what are we actually doing? There's always a two-way street. So when you guys start understanding this from a man's perspective, we are watching everything around you. We're not just watching you. We're listening to the way you talk, the way you dress. We're looking at your friends. We're looking at what you do during your free time. We're looking at your focus. We're looking at every single thing around you. And if you take all of that and you're presenting nothing but the trauma, you're presenting nothing but the pain and the frustration of being let down from your past situations, the right man isn't even going to want to intertwine with you, which is why you hear these things saying, people are just giving up on us. It's a lack of, healthy black men and healthy black women. No, the healthy black men and the healthy black women are either in the house, not talking to anybody, isolated, waiting for the day that they run across somebody else, or unfortunately they stepped out of the race, right? Which is why that argument that my cousin was making about us stepping outside of our race and everything is valid to an extent, right? Because there has to be a level of accountability happening on both sides of the equation. You cannot by no means think that you're going to sit there and constantly abuse a demographic of people and think that they're still going to hold that favor towards you. Right? There needs to be a white flag surrendering on both sides. Men, we need to be, okay, we're going to take better care of you. We're going to listen. We're not going to be as aggressive. We're going to, fix our vocabulary. Stop calling y'all the B words, really approach things with love. The women, let's move from a little bit more integrity. There's a lot of you guys too, women, especially seeing my last, experiences and stuff like that. You guys can become very sneaky and manipulative without even realizing it, right? You guys know when to say certain things, when not to say certain things. And you guys typically hide the things that hurt men, right? You guys need to use that level of vulnerability, that emotion, that feeling, and use it to actually better situations, right? Because the power is really in the women's hands in a lot of situations. Because even man, you can go to a jail, right? You can take the hardest of hardest dudes. You can take a literal killer. Nobody in that dorm, nobody in that cell, nobody's messing with him. But chances are there's at least one girl that's on the outside that's making that killer cry at night. Whether we want to believe it or not, women hold such a power inside of men. But the women, you guys aren't necessarily consciously aware of how much you guys truly do hold in a man's life. So when you're moving out of your hurt, when you're moving out of your pain, when you're moving out of your trauma, you're passing that trauma on to the next person. You're passing it on to the man. Now, if that man doesn't have a strong core within himself to acknowledge that what you're doing is causing toxicity, you're going to breed a negative environment because he's going to play off your energy. And then it's just going to be two toxic individuals just swimming in a pool together. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not fun. Self-accountability is going to solve a lot of this. And the moment that you start self-regulating too, I've noticed, Mike, man, I've been in interactions with sometimes even, other races, Latinas and stuff like that. They approach me, they're being very rowdy. They're like, hi, just, you feel me? But when I respond, I'm very calm. It was very level-headed. It was like, oh, I get what you're saying. Well, this is what I was doing, maybe we could do like this. And I had like women literally tell me like, oh my God, you're so calm. I didn't even realize that I was being toxic. I didn't even realize that I was yelling and that I was being a problem. I just thought I was just being myself, but just being around your energy and seeing how calm and just how soft-spoken you are is making me check myself. We have that power as men and women to make people check themselves, but we don't exhibit that enough because we don't believe in ourselves and hold ourselves to the standards in order to actually check somebody. If we want this union between black women and black men to actually become something, positive and something that we can actually build upon, we need to start self-regulating and start checking ourselves. Am I out of pocket? Is there a better way I can go about things? Because you can never ask for something from your counterparts that you aren't willing to bring to the table yourself. And if you aren't willing to bring that loyalty, that safe space, that holding space, if you aren't ready to bring that depth, that love, that understanding, that communication to the table your damn self, do not expect nobody else to be doing it for you. The moment that you can do it for yourself, it's kind of crazy because it's a thing about energy and collectives and spirituality and everything like this. You will definitely attract more people who is on that frequency. The further you step along your healing process, the further you go on your healing journey. So do not become stagnant by all this trauma, all the systems, the governments, your exes, all this, the media. Don't let this facade dilute the reality of black love still being a thing, and very possible if we put our pride, our ego, and our insecurities to the side. So with that being said, I think I touched on what I really want to touch on when it relates to at least that video in specific, right? You guys can go check that podcast out. It's still up. I think it's called like Toxic Masculinity or something like that. It's very potent. It's to do with the, Christmas hat on, stuff like that. And like I said before, if you guys want to hit me up on Instagram, TikTok, anything like that, ask me some questions. It's all love. And as always, I have my books down in the description, Message to South Central, and my guided healing meditation, workbook diary for the people who's out there really trying to get deeper on the healing process. And you're a reader, you feel like you need some of this, insight, it may really help you. So with that being said, I love y'all. I love y'all. I love y'all. And I'm going to see y'all in the next video. Be safe out here.